Welcome to the Time to Level Up podcast. I'm your host, Andrea Liebross. Each week, I focus on the systems, strategy, and big thinking you need to CEO your business and life to the next level. Are you ready? Let's go. Hello, my friends, and welcome back to the podcast. How are you in this mid-August timeframe? What's happening? Well, if you're like me, you might be gearing up for the beginning of school. Can you believe it? Kids are already getting ready to go back to school. And this is often a time when we as adults reconsider what we're doing. What's going to be our school this year? What are we going to work on? What are we going to learn? And I think it's very timely that today I have Nicole Gebhardt of Niche Pressworks, who is my publisher of my book that is coming out next month, on to talk to us about what it takes to write a book and what that process looks like. And I'm going to share with you a little bit about what my journey has looked like in writing a book. But before we dive in, I want to encourage you to head over to shethinksbigthebook.com and sign up to become a Think Big Insider so that you can receive all the info about the book launch that is happening at the end of September, about how to obtain discounted pricing, get a free ticket to my She Thinks Big From Action to Extraordinary Masterclass that's going to happen right around book launch time, to get some inside looks at what it's like and some inside tips from the book, all as becoming part of the Think Big movement and being a Think Big Insider. So shethinksbigthebook.com. If you have not gone there yet and put your email address in, even if you're already on my email list, I encourage you to do just that. You're going to be amazed at what arrives in your inbox. Okay, without further ado, I want you to sit down, buckle up, and listen into my conversation with Nicole. This is one, I don't love listening to my own podcast, got to be honest. But I did go back and listen to this one because I am still kind of in amazement that I have written a book and published a book that you are all going to be able to get your hands on in the coming weeks. It's not something that was ever on my bucket list, but man, after I've done it, there's something about it that I can't really put words into how it all feels. So maybe you can gather how it feels just by listening to this conversation. Here we go. Nicole and Andrea on writing a book. Hello, my friends, and welcome back to the Time to Level Up podcast. I'm excited today to talk about all things books and publishing books. I'm on the verge of publishing my book. It is probably, when you guys are listening to this, we've got some copies. They're probably alive out there. But I also have not just my copies, but I have my publisher with me today, Nicole Gebhardt of Niche Pressworks. And she is going to share with us, we're going to have a discussion really about what it takes to write the right book. And before we get started though, Nicole, why don't you introduce yourself? Tell us who you are and what you do, why you do it. Tell us all the things.
All the things. Absolutely.
All the things.
Well, thank you. Okay. So, the first thing I think I overcome when I talk to people and they hear that I'm a publisher is the bucket that they traditionally put publishers in. And we're uniquely different from that. So I like to tell people, throw out what you think you know about the publishing world, because that's not us. We don't do that. So what's unique about me is my background is in communication strategy. So I worked at Caterpillar in public affairs and employee communications for 12 years. And I got to sit at the executive table for years. I was the girl that not only took the notes, but would plan the communication strategy once we walked out of the room. So I sat in the room with, vice presidents that were making directional decisions, and I learned strategy from them. I was fortunate to be mentored by 6 different vice presidents in that role. And so when I look at, no matter what we're doing, I'm always looking at it from a strategic eye. Where are we now? What are we trying to achieve? And what assets do we need to help you get there? So I am fundamentally a business and marketing strategist, and I created a publishing company because when I work with someone like you, the number one thing I discovered that I could help you create is the right book for your goals. And so all the decisions then are based from that strategy perspective. Like, what do we need and what else do we need? Because it's not just about the book that you need. It's how is the book going to be used inside of all of your other processes, your systems, your objectives, like your marketing, but also like even as an asset to pre-qualify and pre-educate clients. And then for them, when they're working with you, to have as a reference tool. There's so many things that go into the right book that you got to get this right. So when I work with a client like you, I prefer to start from scratch. And, we'll get into this, but I always say about 4 out of 5 people who come to me are writing the wrong book before they start.
So I think that was something that was probably, if someone said to me, what was the hardest part? It was figuring out what book to write. That definitely was the hardest part. And I think it took us probably like a good 6 months to figure out, if I count all the outlining time that I went down the wrong path in. It took a while. So what is your process, I guess? I mean, I know the process now since I've done it, but what would you say, like, where do you start? Or did I start in the wrong place? I don't know. What do we think?
Well, one of the things that's interesting, because I'm working on my book right now as well, is, it's all about systems and processes. And so we really have been working on that, even tightening that up. But it's all about understanding what I now call the 9 key decisions that you need to make before you start writing the book. And what took us a while in this process, and it, don't scare everybody with 6 months. That was like literally the outlining as well. And you had some major events going on.
Yes.
Yeah. And it has a habit of, go big or go home. So,
this whole last 18 months, it's go big or go home. That's why the word big had to be in the title of the book, I guess. I don't know. But yes, everything was happening and colliding all at once. But I think we had our initial conversation, maybe it was in April. And at that point, I think I said to you, I don't want to start anything till July, but I was thinking about it. And then we started in and we had numerous discussions about those 9 steps and where this book was going to lead me and what it was its purpose really, right, in my business. So what do you see authors struggle with there?
Yeah, it's funny because as we record this today, it's the end of June, and you literally started the end of June 1 year ago. So, and you crushed it. So 97% of our authors get their book written and published in 1 year or less. And you did that. But it's so much more than that, like the growth that's happened. I can't wait to dig in for you and the transformation. But we spent a lot of time clarifying, well, who is your ideal client? Like moving forward, what's your vision for your business moving forward? Where do you want to be? And this is all great because it's in your book as well, right? And
yes,
position, heal thyself. You're really great at coaching somebody else. We all are. We can help anybody else, but when we come to do it for ourselves, we need somebody else that's guiding you through this process. And that's what you got to do. But we got really clear on where do you want to head moving from here? And that's not an easy thing for a lot of people to articulate.
No, it's not. And I think I was kind of stuck in what I was doing, and not necessarily where I wanted to go. Although I thought I knew where I wanted to go. I mean, but I think in writing the book, I even kicked it up another notch. So it's not as if I couldn't access the future. Like I could, but I had to even think almost like future 2.0, like the next future, not just for the next year. Where did I want to be in another year? Where did I want to be in 3 years? Where do I really want to be in 10 years is what I had to really think about. And you kind of pushed me even more to do that than I was doing on my own. So thank you for doing that.
You're welcome.
Because that's who the book is written for. It's for the person, my ideal client today, but also in the future. And I think that's kind of what happened in the book too. The book is sort of an evolution of someone's growth. That's kind of how it happens. And that's kind of mirrors my own growth. And I think it mirrors the growth of most of my clients.
Well, this is juicy because this is what I tell people about the value of working with, in particular, me and what we do in this first phase, which is most authors make the mistake of writing alone, and they write from where they've been and who they've been. In fact, a lot of people have a book idea that they brew on for 2 years before they sit down to write it. Then they take 2 years to write it. And by the time it comes out, it's literally a 5-year-old brand and a 5-year-old idea. And then when you do that, it becomes an anchor to your previous life and your previous person, and your book comes out, and then you get this elevated status of being an author, a best-selling author, to a book that's based on the old you, and it's like this dead weight anchor. And that's where a lot of people then are like, they come out and they, 3 months after their book is out, they're like, well, now what do I do with it? Because it's kind of useless. And so they move and they look on for the next thing. But what we're doing in this process, when all of the coaches and experts that we bring in this journey, and we'll talk about it, we're trying to identify who's the you of the future, which, by the way, you talk about in your book, right?
I do.
So who is the you of the future, and how can we help you get there faster? And so we're elevating the way you think about your ideal clients, how you talk, your systems and processes have to elevate, because all of that we're growing into. And then I like to say we're bending time, because as your book comes out now and then you start moving into it, like the amount of acceleration that you'll have starting from 1 year ago today until 1 year from now is just exponential. It's really a cool thing if you do it right.
Yeah, because I had to think about not just, so there's so many things happening simultaneously, right? So you're writing this book, but then you're also looking at the back end of your business and thinking, okay, if this book does what I want it to do. So I've been really thinking about, what do I want the book to do? I continue to think about it. I mean, we had to think about it on day one, but I continue to think about it. So I would love my book to create what I call the big thinking movement, or, having more big thinkers out there in the world. And if that's what's going to happen, then they're all going to want to grow themselves and their businesses. And that may lead me to more clients, working with more people, making a bigger impact in the world. Is the back end of my business ready for that? Right. So I've been trying to figure that out too, and to make changes to accommodate that at the same time. So I think that's kind of like the bending of time.
Yeah.
It's a lot.
Yeah. And that's part of the 9 questions, the 9 key questions that we answer in that planning phase before you start writing the book, which is, okay, what does success look like to you? Right. So like personally, professionally, do you want to work 3 days a week? Do you want to work 5 days a week? Right. What does it look like? Who is your ideal audience then? And then the next question we ask is, okay, what are the offers that you need to have? And then we can look across and we're like, well, wait a minute. You said you want to work 2 days a week, and yet you've got 5 mastermind groups and 3 podcasts. And then like, okay, and then you've got 4 different audiences. Does that really work for you? And the way we lay it out, and we have this vision board, and we start to see the disconnects, then you can step back and go, oh, that would create a business I don't really want. So before I start in on creating this book, let me begin to think about, what do I really want?
Yeah. And I think that was one of the most exciting parts of this whole process, was thinking about, what do I really want? It also was scary too, but it was exciting. And I think, that's a lot of what I help my clients do, but yet you are helping me do it for myself, which, when you're in your own peanut butter jar, you can't read the label. So you need someone to help you do that. But I came to you not really even knowing what I wanted to write about. I wasn't one of these people that said, oh, I've been wanting to write this specific book for the last 2 years. So we had to really start, once I figured out, okay, where do I want my business to go? Then we had to figure out, what is this book actually about? That was a challenge. Then how would I know what I did next, but in your technical world, what's the next thing we did?
Yeah, well, it was a while that we figured out the articulating the bold promise of the book, like what result were you getting your reader? And then what was the hook? And that was a big chunk of that, because, Amazon, there are over 40 million books on Amazon. And that means a lot of the titles that we considered were already not only taken, but taken multiple times. So that was part of the interesting challenge. And so once we knew the theme of what your ideal audience is struggling with, then we had to find, how do you wrap that into a title? And so then we move into the process. And so there's always a couple of really interesting steps. I'm not the only expert that I want in the process, helping our clients elevate the game. So you got to meet with our mindset coach, which, you two do the same work, but you did meet with her. And then that's one of the first stops, because we're elevating your thinking constantly and helping challenge you on how you've thought in the past versus how you want to think in the future. And then you met with Michael. And Michael is our Hollywood storytelling expert. And so you got to work with Michael Haig, and he'd be so proud of your opening story. I can't wait. I'm going to share that with him. So Michael is the guy, just for the audience's information. He's worked with many Hollywood movie experts. So he's worked with Will Smith and Jada. Literally was working with them for 7 years on contract, helping them. And so he's part of our process, and you got to work with Michael in this process. So, and then your editor. So do you want to talk about all the people in the food chain and how that experience was for you?
So it was fun working with Dina, who is the mindset coach, because we do similar work. But again, the sign of a good coach is someone who can ask you good questions. So she asked me some really good questions, and I walked away, I think, even thinking bigger or more futuristic. What's her phrase? Why am I blanking on this? What's her greatness? Yes, right. So, stepping into my greatness, she had helped me do that. Then Michael Haig was so interesting, learning from him how to tell a good story. And was I telling the right story in the beginning? And what was interesting about that is I spent a lot of time on that story. I sat in the Carmel Public Library and wrote it for a couple days. And then what I realized was, once I talked to him, I had spent maybe, I'll call it 2/3 of the real estate of the story talking about the past story, like too much of the past and not really enough of what I wanted to communicate. I had tried to put all of what I wanted to really communicate into like one sentence at the end. And he kind of called me out on that. And then I rewrote the story to share more and to really communicate how I got to where I am today. And then we got into the actual outlining of the book, which was very interesting for me, because I really struggled there, because what I do isn't necessarily in a straight line. It is not a nice little 6th grade outline with Roman numeral 1, 2, and 3.
Yeah.
It isn't like that. So that was really hard for me. And I think once I started talking to Melanie, who was my editor, she was able to point out to me that the outline didn't sound like me, which I agreed with her, because she said, I listened to a couple of your podcasts. This doesn't sound like you. I'm like, I agree with you. And she kind of recognized that, no, my thinking doesn't necessarily go in some nice numeric line. And then we created more of a developmental outline, which was really what got me going. Like, that's when I was like, okay, I think I know what's happening. I'm feeling way better about this. So she asked me tons of questions, really, and we almost wrote a very rough draft of the book in the form of an outline. That's kind of how that happened. So she was sort of a miracle worker, I would call it.
So Melanie, yeah. So it literally is exploring, and you and I were up against, I'm a very, when it comes to that part, I can outline really quickly. And it's funny because you are a process girl and a systems girl, but when it came, so it struck me as odd, like we kept coming up against this, and I'm like, I don't understand. Like, how to do processes and systems inside and out, but that process was not working for you in this table of contents. And so that's where, I call Melanie and I'm talking to her. I'm like, okay. And Melanie goes, oh, wait, I think I know what. And so we ended up saying, all right, let's move this process over to working with Melanie. And she had an alternative way that really worked for you. And
it did work for me, because I think I love processes and systems. Like, I am a total process systems girl, but I think the interesting part of it is when I work with my clients, they're not all coming in at the same point. So yes, I could say I walk my clients through a process, but I don't walk them through it necessarily in the same order, or we don't start at the exact same point, because they are at different stages of their business, and not necessarily even stages of their business, but their own personal development. Their own thinking, their own, so there's like the mindset piece, and then there's the systems and processes piece, and they've got to kind of correlate in order for you to move forward. And so if someone said to me, explain your process, I have to say, well, wait a second, where are they in the mindset piece, or where are they in the process piece? And then where do they meet and then I'll start. But you can't be like, but what's your process? But I can't explain it because it's not always exactly the same. So Melanie was able to figure that out with me.
Yeah.
That was helpful.
Well, you're as a coach, the coaching side of you is very intuitive in working, right?
Right.
But as we look at your business, and what I was challenging with is, look, you can't scale and begin to step out of your business unless there is a journey and a journey map, right?
Right.
And so what excites me so much about your finished book now is you identified, you built it. You've got the journey map now. And yes, it's like that's the game changer. And that's what people don't do. When authors work alone and they're not working with somebody who pushes them to do these things, the book comes out and they can't scale their business because they haven't done the hard things that you've now done. Now, like, you are free to run. And that's what's really neat.
Yeah. So it is, I mean, that we really built the process inside the book. And that was very, very exciting to me. And I'm excited of what I'm going to do with the book, like how this is all going to change things.
You've got some really neat frameworks inside of there. Just the parking lot analogy is really fun, right? And without giving away all the juicy stuff about the book. So, yeah.
But that kind of tells you, like, this so in the beginning of the book, when you all read it, you'll see that I start out asking, which parking lot are you in? And then that really gives us a launching point to figure out what to do next. And now I don't want to tell you what the parking lots are, so you have to go read the book to find out. But I think that's something that's really has to do with where you are, what your thinking is about, right? Where you are, where your mindset is, and what you're ready to tackle and what you're not ready to tackle. Yeah.
It's really good. Yeah. I mean, there are just several sections in there that are really good snippets of your new process. And even if it's not like step A, 1, 2, 3, right? It's no matter what, have we accomplished clarity on these 12 things?
Yes.
Or these things. And then you have the chapters in there where you walk them through. Okay, this is how you identify this is how you work through this, how you think about it, and you help them sort their thoughts. And these are all things you're doing intuitively with clients. But when you got to put it in a book, it's a whole new game. It's a whole new game.
So I think something that was interesting to me is that I do tons of writing and content creating, but it's mostly short form versus this book, which is long form. And I was not used to writing, 45,000 words in one sitting. So that was hard to organize my thoughts into a longer format. I had lots of different short form things, but putting them all together, that was the challenge. So I think once we came up with all right, there's going to be 3 parts to the book. And then within those 3 parts, there's going to be 12 chapters. And how that all kind of played out, and then figuring out what the theme or kind of like what's the main point you want to get across in each chapter, determining what that was, and then what were going to be my kind of like backup details to support that main point that I wanted to get across in that chapter. It was very systematic. So it was kind of interesting because writing this book is really like a microcosm of what I coach on, that you need a system, but you also need the right thinking. And so I think, that's why I don't think anyone can do this on their own, because you've got to have someone coaching you along to keep you in the right mindset. And you've got to have a system or process in which to follow. And I can see why people say, it took me 5 years to write this book, or I wrote the wrong book, or I wrote a book and then I published it and 2 people bought it. I get all that now. And I don't think I necessarily got it all in the end. I'm just someone in the beginning that's like, I know I can't do stuff without, like, I'm a better person if I have a support system, which is one of the chapters I talked about in one of the chapters in the book. But so that's really why I was like, I can't write a book by myself. So there.
Okay. There's one more gem for the book I want to talk about. And then I would love to talk about the future and what you're headed to.
Okay.
And it was something that you and I had talked about. And, it was relating to this idea of priority versus goals. And I just love that section. And I know we've talked about it before. You want to expand on that a little bit? Because I just think that's really good gold from you.
Yeah, I think that a lot of people, a lot of women especially, freak out with goals, right? They're like, I don't like to set goals because if I don't reach them, it's going to make me feel horrible. Or I don't want to set a goal and then not reach it. And what will other people think? or I never reach them anyway, so it's a waste of time to even think about it. So I think that it's really helpful. If you love to set goals and love that word, then great. I'm in and I'm okay with it. But if that's something that really stresses you out, but yet you feel like you're kind of in I call it like a Fred Flintstone car, like you get your feet are moving really fast, but you're not going anywhere. If you think about Fred Flintstone, then flip the switch and start thinking about what are your priorities. And you can use that word priorities as kind of a replacement for goals, but you actually really even need to think bigger than that and thinking about where are you, or what are the most important things in your life in the moment. So I talk about in the book, these 7 facets of life and business. And that's even a bigger picture, like a more of a 30,000 foot view, because your priorities should really, or goals, priorities/goals, we can use them interchangeably, should really align with where you are and what your level of satisfaction is with these 7 facets of life: health, wellness, financial, spiritual, that kind of stuff. So it's kind of a layered look at goals in a sense. And then you can even I encourage the reader to even get further, go deeper even, and start to think about, okay, now what do you want to focus on in order to reach the goal or in order to fulfill the priority? So we talk about from a kind of a quarterly viewpoint, okay, what's your focus going to be for the next 90 days? And then we can break it down even further. But yeah, I mean, we don't have to use that word goals if it's scary. But I think we all are better people when we know what direction we're moving in. We all want to move towards something. Usually we're trying to move towards something and simultaneously moving away from something else. So unless we know what we're moving towards, we're probably not making progress. We're just kind of in our Fred Flintstone car with our feet moving fast, but going nowhere. So yeah, so that's a really fun part of the book. It's kind of in the middle of the book. It's in the big plans section where I go a little deeper into that and try to make it more, I don't want to say manageable, but more usable for the reader.
Well, the reason we had discussed this was something that I had been geeking out about, over a year ago, which was I am not a goals person, but I'm incredibly highly motivated towards I'm a problem solver. Like that's at the end of the day, that's what I love. And so the priorities angle and that language is just wonderful because it's literally like, no, it's a priority for me to solve this, to achieve this, to take care of this, to resolve this, whatever it is. And then once I'm done, I'm really happy. And so that's why I just love the language that you had in there about it. I thought it was great. It also speaks to this thing that you and I share, which is this huge love for systems and processes all day long, because when you have systems and processes in your coaching model inside your own business, like for you on our journey, it allows you to stay focused on what's important now. So the person we haven't talked about yet is Kim, your project manager as well, right? So they're actually on our end, there are 10 members of my team that come along and support you on this journey. And so not all of them get to meet you personally or recognized, but the designer is another one that's been really instrumental in this. But so Kim's role is to keep you focused in the process where you are right now. Like, so you don't worry about it. And all the other things, they'll take care of themselves later. Her job is to, keep you focused on what matters most right now and nothing else. And that's the value, again, of having great systems and processes and clear priorities.
Yeah. And I think what Kim does, I mean, my brain can go to like worrying about 6 months from now. And Kim's like, let's just worry about today, Andrea. Like, okay. Okay. So part of like taking even that goals, priorities, focus thing a step further, and you, Nicole, being like, let's solve the problem. It's really also about what decisions do I need to make right now? So there's a whole part of the book too about making decisions and how important that is. And I had to keep thinking about, okay, so we're building a house at this simultaneously. So my brain is on overload with like house decisions. Well, this book was a whole bunch of, I didn't even think of it as that, to be honest. Like on day one, if you said to me, describe what's going to happen, I don't think I would have put the word decision into the paragraph. But really what it was also was a whole big series of decisions about where I want my business to go, about what I want to focus on, even about nitty gritty things in the book too. Like right even before we started recording this podcast, Nicole, she's like, I just want to ask you about this one sentence. is this really what you want to say here? I was like, no, actually, it's not what I want to say. I've been thinking about that, but I didn't change it. And so anyway, so we've decided now we're going to change it, but it's a series of decisions. So I think you need a system or a process. And that's what you guys have provided to help me make decisions along the way too.
Yeah. Well, I'm ridiculously excited. So let's talk about thinking big. First, let's celebrate the number of endorsements that you already have, including a big one that we put on a bucket list that I remember you going, oh, I could never. Like, I don't know. You want to talk about that one? I love that one.
Yeah. So Nicole started talking about, okay, we need to think about endorsements for the book. Is there going to be one on the cover? Is there going to be some on the inside? And I kept thinking like, I don't know. I don't know who I would get endorsements from. Like I kind of probably, since I couldn't decide on who or how to ask, I probably avoided it for too long. But finally, when I got my act together,
hold on.
Okay.
And that decision is one of the 9 key things we talked about literally.
Oh yeah. We talked about it like on day one.
Yeah. It's you, those, and again, that's the thing. Most authors wait until the end. So I want to bring that here is because there was a strategy behind it, of course.
There was. So it was brewing, right? Like it was simmering in my brain from the first day we met, because you pull out all here are the 9 parts, right? So and then I kind of created a little bit of a bucket list of who I might want an endorsement from. And one was someone from the Full Focus or Michael Hyatt organization. They keep changing their name because I'm a big proponent of thinking in the way that the Full Focus planner is organized. And I became a Full Focus certified pro and yada, yada. But I was like, well, if I could get someone to endorse me from there, that would be awesome. How am I going to do that? And then I kind of thought, okay, well, I was on their podcast. I think I was on their podcast before you and I started talking. I had been on their podcast, and the podcast producer was really the one that was orchestrating all of that. It's like, I think I still have his email. So I kind of went, let me email him. So I emailed him, and then I thought, well, if I don't really want an endorsement from the podcast producer. I mean, that would have been okay, but let me see if I can get Megan Hyatt Miller, who is the CEO, on my podcast to help her promote her book, because what comes around goes around. And so the podcast producer kind of connected me to the right person for that. And then she came on my podcast. And before we got off the recording of that, I asked her if she would endorse my book. And she said, sure, but we have so much corporate compliance. I don't know. Like, I can't say yes or no. So, but here's an email of another person to email. So I did that. And I actually sent an advanced reader copy or snippet of the book. So I didn't even know what that was. So I learned what that was. And I guess Nadia, another person of Nicole's team, helped put that together. And then I sent that over. And I also put together, here are some suggested endorsements just to make it easy. And actually, Nicole, the one she came back with wasn't one of my suggestions. She wrote her own, but they did come back and they said, sure, here's the endorsement. So that was big. I was like, I could swear, but yeah, holy moly. Yeah. So that was so fun. And I got to talk to her, and she's we're probably, this podcast is going to air before Megan's will on on Time to Level Up, but stay tuned for that.
Really cool. Again, and really you have a lot of incredible endorsements at the beginning of your book.
I do. That was just one that was like harder in my brain to get or to ask for. Not even to get, just to ask for. So
it was a thinking big moment for you.
It was.
Yeah. It was huge. Darn it when you have to walk the talk.
I know. Geesh.
So let's do that, because this, if you look at this, Michael Haig's story model, right, and you have now done all the hard things, and you have transformed significantly in this past year. You've challenged yourself in a lot of new ways, in ways that a year ago you're like, I don't think I want to do that, need to do that, and then you have done it. So looking back, how are you different?
How am I different? I think a couple things. I think I've learned to trust myself a little more, like trust myself that this will actually happen. it's a huge I've become more patient. Not that I think I'm pretty patient to begin with, but this was even an exercise in patience. I think that I've become even a bigger thinker, way more future focused than I was. I think I was to begin with. But again, it's like, I guess everything here is like just elevated where I was. So yes, I was patient, but I'm more patient. Yes, I was trusting, but I think I'm more trusting. Yes, I could think, access my future you, but now I can really access my future you. And I think it's also, instead of like, I'm a really big person say, well, what's the next best step? But now I kind of think like, well, what's the next best leap? Like, what's the next best leap? Not a step. Like, what if we were leaping versus just taking steps? So that's kind of fun. That's kind of fun. And I guess I never was one to think like this. Writing a book was not on my bucket list. People like, was that always on your bucket? No, it was not always on my bucket list. But I said, well, I remember you and I sat down, it was like 100 years ago at McAllister's. And you were like, you should write a book. And I was like, I'm not writing a book right now. I'm not doing that, Nicole. I'm not ready for that. And then, I mean, that probably was 10 years ago. And then here we are, we're writing a book. And I think I got to the place maybe in 2021 or beginning of 22, probably beginning of 22. I was like, I'm going to write an ebook. That's what I got to. And then I said that to my coach, and she's like, no, you're going to write a real book. Like, I'm going to write a real book. Okay, well, I better call Nicole then if I'm going to write a real book. So that was like not a step. That was not a step. That was a leap.
It was a leap.
Oh, yeah.
Michael Haig, the story coach, has a really great challenge that he talks about when you're doing this inner transformation, that there's this one sentence that you can complete, which is, I will do whatever it takes to achieve my goals, but just don't ask me to blank.
Mm.
And whatever that blank is the one thing you must do.
Yeah, so I probably would have answered, just don't ask me to write a book.
Because you're fearless in all other areas.
Yeah, I was like, writing a book. I don't know, man. Writing like podcast scripts, that's a lot, but writing a book. But
and putting it out there in front of Megan Hyatt Miller.
I know, right?
Of thousands of people who, that's the game changing. And that's why, there are vanity presses out there that'll help you write a book in a weekend, right? And
yes.
And then there are people who are like, oh, go write your book and come back. But like, this inner transformation is what it's all about.
Yeah,
right?
I don't think it would not have been as impactful for me personally. And I don't think would have been as impactful for my business, which we'll see what happens there. But if I hadn't gone through the whole process, like I think if I just sat down with my pen and wrote a book and then handed it to you, that doesn't do it. It just doesn't do it. It's not, you don't really see the evolution. And I also could see, it was like, I know when I'm coaching, I say like, sometimes I can see people's brains like clicking, like I can see the clicks going on. I could feel the clicks going on in my brain. I could, and between you asking me questions and Melanie asking me questions, explain this more, or tell me really what you mean, or why is this important? I mean, up until like, I don't know, 2 weeks ago, we were still doing some of the very final proofreading and editing. And Melanie voxered me and she's like, why did you write this? Like, tell me more. I don't understand. Like, cause I had put a comment next to it. This needs to change. What about, I want to change it like this. And she, even at that point, she's like, why? And I had explained it to her and she's like, oh, I get it. But that helped me even clarify why I wanted that to be in there. So yeah.
I think this transformation for you, and you talk a lot about your coaching in there. You talk a lot in your book about all the transformation you've had helped other people do. This just 10x is what you're able to do for your clients now. Which again, I'm just really excited for you and all that's ahead.
Thank you. Well, I couldn't have done it without you. I couldn't have done it. What's next for you?
What's next for me? Well, first
what's your next big leap?
book. So, I'll invite people first. Like, if you want to know more about what we do and what Andrea has been through, we do an annual publication called the Niche Leaders Journal. And Andrea says niche. I say niche, as in the riches are in the niches.
The riches are in. No, you never said that to me. Told me that.
That's how yeah. So okay. I once heard, you can Google this, that, you say niche or niche, and the Canadians say niche, and traditional America says niche. I say, are you drinking tea with your pinky out, or are you having a beer? That's kind of the difference. But so we do an annual publication called the Niche Leaders Journal, and you can find it on our website, and you can either request a printed copy or read the virtual copy, which it talks a lot about our process in there. So there's a whole publishing section that explains the process and how we work with our clients. And then there's some cool stories, and there's a story by Michael Hagan there. So I had started to write my book. And 2 years ago, I realized that the magazine idea kind of came to me as this download. And so for 2 years now, we've produced the magazine, which has just been a game changer for our business and the way, because we have really cool stories we wanted to tell, and they're highly visual. And so that's what the magazine does for us. But I shelved a book that I will now finish. And so that's what's big next for me. It's the book.
I love it. I love it. Okay. So you need to go check out Niche Pressworks. And if you want to check out, whenever you're listening to this, which is if you're listening in order and when podcasts are released, the book probably hasn't launched yet, but you can still go be part of the Think Big movement and get on the list so that you get discounted pricing on launch day. You're going to get lots of other free bonuses. You're going to get a free ticket to a masterclass I'm doing around the book in October, and you can go access all of that at shethinksbigthebook.com. That was a whole other decision-making process. URLs. Who knew? That would be included. Well, Nicole, it has been so fun to have you here and to work with you over the past year. And yeah, I guess you did say 90% of our authors finish in a year, and that worked out. That's what happened. Look at that.
97. It's a process, man. You and I, if there's a process, the process works.
The process works. And I'm just going to leave with this. So Nicole and I went to, we just happened, we both decided independently, but we both ended up going to a conference together in November. And the little motto of the conference was this. Okay, it was LFG. And we both looked at each other and said, what does that mean? Because neither of us knew, because we're old. So I am not going to say what it means, but you need to go Google what LFG means. And it's not the version looking for groups, because that's one version of LFG. But that was kind of how we left the conference, LFG. So I'm going to leave the podcast with LFG. All right. See you next week.
Let's do it.
Okay, my friends. So what do you think? What do you think about writing this book? Are you ready to write a book? Would you like to write a book? Do you want to write a book? What's that going to feel like? What would it look like? Are you ready? Are you ever ready? I think it's something that's worth exploring. I think it's something that's worth planting a seed in your brain about. And we may not water this seed for a while, but it's something to consider. So if you would like to have more of a discussion around writing a book, please reach out. I'd be happy to share my experience with you, and connect with Nicole. She'll tell you all the ins and outs and help you figure out what is the best book to write for you. Okay, my friends, stay tuned this month to learn more about all the things She Thinks Big. I want you to make sure that you have become a She Thinks Big insider by going to shethinksbigthebook.com so that you can get not just discounted pricing on launch day and a free ticket to the She Thinks Big Action to Extraordinary Masterclass, but you can also get kind of snippets and previews of what is inside that book that I wrote just for you. Until next time, remember, now is the time to level up. There's never been a better time, and I'm here to do it with you. See you next week. Hey, listening to podcasts is great, but you also have to do something to kick your business up a notch. You need to take some action, right? So go to Andrea's, with an S, links with an S.com, andreaslinks.com, and take the quiz. I guarantee you'll walk away knowing exactly what your next best step is to level up.